Happy Sunday, everybody. Welcome into another edition of the Arkansas Football Recruiting Report with Otis Kirk. That's Otis Kirk. I'm Evan Kamiko. Otis, it's been a fun couple of days. Spring football officially underway. Thursday was the first day of practice. We've heard from Coach Pittman earlier the week on Tuesday, and then again on Friday. We'll talk about that in just a few moments, but we'll start today with potentially the biggest news of the offseason so far. Branson Hickman, an SMU offensive line grad transfer, looking to come to Arkansas. He's been on an official visit here this weekend. How has that gone?
It's going well. His words were it exceed. Let me start over. He had high expectations. It exceeded those expectations. So that's how the best describe it. Just use his word. He had high expectations. It exceeded them, and so I would say it went rather well. Speaking of transfers, Junior Carmona, Fernando Carmona, whatever. That was his player host, by the way, Evan.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty good sign. Fernando's been here, 3 months, and he's already hosting recruits,
Absolutely.
So,
And,
yeah.
and even with those guys, we've seen the videos from Hogs Plus of them all singing and dancing with Taylon Green. And so the offensive line, it looks rejuvenated, and hopefully that's a big sign for, to go out and get a guy like Branson Hickman.
Yeah, he told me he really likes Eric Mateus. He really likes Coach Pittman. And he said yesterday after they had the presentation for the prospect day that we will talk about, that Sam had a presentation for that after that, Sam sat down with him, with Branson, and mapped out a plan, not just we want you, this and that. He mapped out a plan telling him exactly what he wanted, what he had planned for Branson. And he told him, he said, since you're going in the transfer portal, don't you think you should just come to the SEC? That's the best way, because the kid's goal is to get drafted. In fact, Branson said it best. I asked him about the facilities. I said, do those even matter? He said it does, but the nutritionist matters more. He said because all this visit stuff is great, but he said this is really a business trip,
Mm-hmm.
a business decision for me. And so, it went well. His dad played at TCU. His dad is here with him, was his high school coach. His uncle played in the Kansas City Royals farm system, played baseball at Texas. They're both here. His mom didn't get to make the trip, but Branson had a very, as I said earlier, Eric, I'm not trying to repeat myself, but he said he had high expectations and exceeded them. So that's always a good sign, But he's got a visit to TCU coming up. He's got another visit. He declined to say who it was. He said out of respect for that school and their players, he wanted to wait till it got closer to that time to announce where that is. But he said he's looking at SEC, besides Arkansas and TCU, he's looking at ACC schools. That might tell you something.
Mm-hmm.
And other SEC schools. So, he's going to make a decision mid-April. I don't know how much that TCU where his dad played will factor into it. It could, and if it does, the other factor would be Addison Nichols was a transfer from Tennessee, is playing center. But the thing about it, Branson seemed pretty impressed, I guess is the word I'm trying to find, on what the plan that Sam mapped out for him. He was impressed with it, and he liked it, and he thinks Arkansas and Sam and Eric Mateus can help get him to the NFL. So, and with these transfers, just about every one of them, if they're honest with you, they will tell you that's their goal to play in the NFL. And
Yeah.
he feels like that he can do the SEC, he feels like would help get him to the NFL because you're playing against NFL linemen there. And he
Mm-hmm.
knows that. And that's something TCU can't offer. So the SEC, he said, is a factor. So that's good for Arkansas. As I noted, though, he is considering other SEC schools. But I may be dead wrong on this, but I think it's going to come down to Arkansas and TCU. It's kind of hard to say that when you don't know who that third school is, but I felt pretty good about this kid most of the way. He's a really nice kid, really nice, super nice. And he's really got a good head on his shoulders, Evan. I mean, he's taken everything into consideration. It's not about stars. It's not about, I want a 10-inch story, it's not, and get my face on the news. It's not that. this kid is about business, working and getting to the NFL eventually. That's his goal. He's 6'3", 294, a center. Started his fourth game, he told me, of his sophomore year, and has been a starter ever since. He said, it was an adjustment from high school playing center for his dad to college, because he said, you're the quarterback pretty much of the offensive line, he and the quarterback are the only two players that touch the ball on every play. And he's got a really good head on his shoulders. I think he's going to take a lot into consideration, and that's why I think Arkansas does have a chance, because he takes it all. He's got everything in order, and he's got some priorities. And if Arkansas can help him get to those priorities in his mind better than TCU or any other school, I think he will come here. But we'll see where he goes. It's going to be an interesting decision, and I know he is a priority for the Hogs. As I said the other day, you wish he was 340, 330, but he's not. But he's played against some very good teams at SMU, very good players, defensive linemen who are probably in the NFL now or will be. So it's not like he hasn't faced good competition. He hasn't faced SEC competition, but he's faced good competition.
Yeah, and only time will tell on that. All right, moving along now. Saturday also was prospect day for a lot of young guys to come up here and get to meet some of the coaches and experience the campus and what it's like on the Hill. What did you make of that? What have you heard about that day? How did it go?
Yeah, those are the kids that are looking for the, hey, Otis, I visited. They are the ones looking for the publicity, because they're new to it. It's big to these kids, sophomores, juniors. They had a couple of 24 kids in line, offensive linemen, possible preferred walk-ons, but the most of the kids were 2025. There was a sprinkle of 2026 kids. I'm not aware of any 2027. There may have been some come in, but I had a long list on Pig Trail Nation in Hogville yesterday morning, and I didn't have any 27 kids on there. But Dominio Patterson is a kid that played at West Helena Central last year, 2026. Offensive, defensive lineman. I like him on defense, but he can play either. He's 6'4", 320. He played at West Helena Central, Evan. He transferred to Joe T. Robinson, and he was here yesterday. And man, he is a big kid. In fact, we got his picture on Pig Trail Nation Hogville on the story that I wrote last night. After when I got time to write the story last night, and had done enough interviews to put in the story. His pictures there, you can see what a big kid he is.
Yeah.
And he dominated over at West Helena Central, but I think he went to Joe T, probably bigger school, more better competition and stuff. So, but I think it's gonna work out for him. A kid from that I really like a lot is Ryan Grayson from Beggs, Oklahoma. He's 2025, a safety, 6 foot, 170, 175, 180, whatever. Arkansas, Kansas State, many other schools have offered him. I'm not aware of the Sooners offered him. The other schools over there have, but Ryan Beggs turns out a lot of kids. They've had a lot of prospects. A lot of them go to OU, but I don't know the Sooners will offer Ryan. But he's a big time player, and but Arkansas impressed him yesterday. He said he will be back. He looked at everything and just liked the coaches. Coach Woodson really impressed him. Coach Wilson, those guys are good recruiters. And so he was impressed with here yesterday. They had probably close to 40 kids here. They played home run derby, and Coach T. Will's team won that, by the way. I don't know what Sam talked about Friday that they were going to have. I believe it was Friday, maybe. Yeah, because we didn't get him third. He said Friday they were going to have a home run derby. Well, I did find out that Travis Williams' team won that. Yeah, it's they have different activity. They took them to the baseball game. The kids were impressed with the atmosphere at the baseball game. I probably got 10 or 15 in my story that people can read there. Different reactions but they were impressed with the coaches, how honest they are. Just matter of fact, they don't the kids don't feel like the coaches are fake. I mean, everybody puts on an act for recruiting. All coaches do. I get that. And Arkansas is no different, but they come across as more kind of being direct and telling you how it is instead of painting a rosy picture and sound like a used car salesman or something.
Yeah.
Kids talk about that all the time. That and they said even Sam, they feel everybody has told them, yeah, they struggled last year, but everybody tells them that Sam Pittman is a really good man. And they said that sticks with them, because they feel like they come here, they can make a difference on the field. I mean, they're not all. I mean, Arkansas hadn't been 4-8, but one time under Sam. So these kids feel like if they come here, they can make a difference. And besides that, we all know Arkansas was just a few plays away from winning a lot of those early games. LSU, Ole Miss, Alabama, Mississippi State, BYU. There was 5 games, and I think all those games are 5 in a row. Well, in BYU, there was 8 after BYU, but 5 games out of 6. So they had a really good chance to win those games, and they didn't win any of them. So that hurts. But they did beat Florida, but the kids feel like Arkansas is pretty close, and so we'll see. I think the offense is going to be better. They feel like the kids love Petrino. They they love his offense anyway. What he brings to it, the explosiveness. We talked Friday about over there. Me and some reporters did about how the receivers are getting separation this spring, and that's a direct deal of Petrino because he did that when he was here before. I don't know how he does it. I don't know what magic he works, but he's got a way of receivers getting open
Yeah.
and getting separation because that was a problem last year. And pretty much the same receivers because Jordan Anthony's not out there right now. The kid's so fast. He's not out there. They were competing for a national championship, on the track deal.
Hmm.
But there was a lot of players here. Just there was all kinds of positions, defensive ends, linebackers, defensive back, a few running backs. We'll see how that affects them. With Coach Smith leaving.
Right. And
Uh,
I'll cut in right there because let's talk about Coach Jimmy Smith. That was something that I think surprised both of us. And Friday morning, the two of us were at practice, and I had a couple shots of Jimmy Smith on the field, and then we
yeah,
get back, and the day kind of goes by, and it's around 1 o'clock, and that's kind of I think when the first report really broke that Jimmy Smith was being targeted for that TCU job. Then around 3, it became official that Jimmy Smith
yeah.
would actually leave Arkansas for TCU. And that was just the most, shocking thing of the day that, Jimmy was at practice in the morning and then in the afternoon he's gone.
Yeah, and people ask me how did they decide on Kobe Smith so quick? Well, here's the deal on that. Here's part of it. I'm not saying it's all of it, but I think Arkansas pretty much expected him to go to Georgia. To be honest with you, Georgia had an opening. They ended up not hiring him. Kirby went a different direction, but I think Arkansas was prepared, thinking Georgia would probably hire him. I know South Carolina has made a run or two at him.
Hmm.
They hired the A&M coach from last year that was with Bobby at A&M. South Carolina hired him. Georgia went a different direction. So these schools went different directions. And then here comes TCU with Kendall Briles and Coach Dykes and those guys down there. And they did hire Jimmy. But yeah, so I think that's how Arkansas was able to fill the vacancy so quick. Because I even had I had Friday night look out. I gave as big a hint as you can give without saying it. I said, watch out for Kobe Smith,
Yeah.
And so you got a different Coach Smith, still got Coach Smith coaching running back. So, but we'll see how the reaction goes on that. But Kobe was here. He actually got his start at Arkansas, Evan, 2012 as a GA with Coach Petrino. Then he coached for him 1 year.
They were together at
1 year at
Louisville.
Western Kentucky, and then at Louisville. So he's been with Bobby. So he I met him one time, maybe twice when he was here in 2012 briefly. I'm sure he doesn't remember me. I try to forget myself, so I'm sure he doesn't.
Oh, come on, Otis. Don't be so
Yeah,
hard on yourself.
no, but no, I'm sure he doesn't remember me. But he might. But I mean, I do briefly remember meeting him, and he was a little involved with the recruiting, as are all GAs, and so I think he's a good hire. I mean, obviously Jimmy was a great coach. Jimmy Smith was a great coach. I'm not trying to make light of that, but in this business or in that business, people move. They make moves, and some coaches do that too. After 4 years at one school, they feel like maybe they're getting stale. You
Yeah.
don't want some people. Jimmy's young coach, older coaches. I don't think it influences them as much, but the younger coaches have aspirations of moving up and being coordinators and head coaches, and so I think they don't want to get stale and get tagged career assistant.
Hmm.
And so they make moves,
Yeah.
and so I think. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say, coaching and you see it all the time throughout the entire country. Coaching staffs are very fluid. They change
Yeah.
almost every year. It's very rare, especially in the college game, where from one year to the next you have the same coaching staff. Because guys do well, and if the running game does well, that means this guy can be in line for a promotion to either a offensive coordinator or potentially head coach.
Right.
You see guys jump all the time, so it's not abnormal that guys move on and coaches and staffs are really fluid.
Yeah, and one thought on X yesterday that I kept seeing, or maybe it was Friday, but anyway, after the news broke about Coach Smith that he was getting out ahead of time because the thinking was Sam would get fired after the year. Look, good coach like Jimmy Smith doesn't think that way because look, as I said at the time on X, I said Jimmy Smith's at least his word. If he goes to TCU and their head coach gets fired next year, Jimmy will be out of work about 3 days. I mean,
Yeah.
great coaches, great assistants are going to get hired. There's that coaching is a different profession. If I got fired, I might have a hard time finding another media job. It's different, but coaching is different than almost any job in the world. They're almost hired to get fired, but you can lose your job even if you didn't get fired. Your boss got fired and they don't retain you, which usually the next coach doesn't. But you can find another job almost immediately. So that's not real. That's not the factor that some people were trying to make it out to be. I think there was a few factors involved, but Jimmy made a career move for him. Uh, he told me Friday night that he's going to miss this place. He loved it here, but I think he felt like it was time to move on.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that. Always time,
No.
always good to have a bit of change. And Otis, anything else before we wrap up?
Uh, no, I mean, we talked about Kobe there. I just feel like no, I just feel like that spring ball, they're looking pretty good. Just real quick, I will say this about Landon Jackson said that the Junior Carmona is one of the best offensive tackles he's ever faced. And this guy has gone against everybody in the SEC, basically, Evan. I think you probably heard Landon say that Thursday, and
Hmm.
or you've seen the quote, and that's one heck of a compliment. Junior was Fernando was rated the number two offensive tackle by Pro Football Focus from the portal. The number one went to Illinois, but Cremona's number one. But I don't think there's a better offensive tackle out there than it came from the portal than Fernando. I don't think there's a better offensive lineman, period, that came from the portal than Fernando Carmona. And then the fact he's hosting recruits this quickly tells you what kind of person he is and what kind of person they think he is at U of A. So I just wanted to give a shout out to Fernando Carmona. That kid's a awesome person, great dude, man. I mean, that was the words of Branson Hickman. He's a great dude. That's what he said about Cremona,
Yeah.
when I talked to Branson, just a great dude. So, and I can leave it at that. Great dude. That's the best way to describe him.
Yeah, Otis, and we know all eyes are going to be on this offensive line throughout the rest of spring football when those scrimmages that open up next weekend and into the spring game and then fall camp later in August. All eyes on that offensive line. We know their struggles last year, hoping to bounce back this year. And hey, Sam Pittman has been Eric Mateos' graduate assistant recently, so that's also a little fun thing there. But
That's
yep, anything?
That's a great point, man. That 30 minutes he spent, he said, you don't really see a head coach doing that. And people asked me last year why Sam didn't spend more time with the offensive line, and this spring he is. So I think I'm proud you brought that up because that's a very noteworthy. I'm sure people saw it in our stories and in your videos and stuff. But that's a very worthy point. I mean, the fact that the head coach is down there, one of the best offensive line coaches ever coached in college football, is down there working with it. And Eric's the type of person that has no ego, doesn't mind the head coach doing that. Some assistants would fight back on that. No, no, no. This is my you hired me to do this job. Get it, but no, Eric does no ego, and kind of like Cremona. And, and right now, what I've seen, Addison Nichols is starting at center. Kudus and Braun are the guards, and then Blackstock and Cremona are the tackles. So that should be pretty interesting. And for people who don't know, they moved Kudus from right tackle last year inside to guard. And so that's a pretty good line. They're working on a second unit, and there could still be some change there. Maury Wiggins hasn't practiced, and he did the other day. Sam bragged on Amarian Harris. It's Amarian. I know everybody calls him Marion, but it's Amarian. And Amarian is someone that Sam bragged on, and I loved him in high school. This was a kid, 380 pounds, playing both ways in the heat. And I really like that kid, Evan. And he's going to be, or that player, and he's going to be a good player for Arkansas. And Tykees Crawford has had his name mentioned a few times. So I think they're sitting pretty good. If you could get Hickman to fight in that spot there, in that offensive line, it would be an interesting scenario. So we'll see how it all plays out. But I think the offensive line is going to be better. It has to be better because you can't have, I don't care. We all know Bobby Petrino's a genius at calling plays, but it doesn't matter if your offensive line doesn't block for you. If you get whipped at the line of scrimmage, you're not going to, you might escape and make a play or two, but you can't consistently do that, even as good as Taylor Green and Malachi and Jacoby. I'll tell you, Malachi surprised me how well he throws football. I had no idea he didn't look as good last spring as he does this spring. He really looks good out there throwing the football. But Taylor Green's a real deal.
Yeah, I saw him the other day. He was at baseball yesterday, and I saw him, and I was kind of a little, like, far enough, but close enough to really see him and get a good look at him. And when I was, standing flat-footed, and he was, he's got all that size. I think he needs to bulk up a little bit, but it should be interesting. But like we've said, we'll wrap up on the fact that Arkansas's offensive line last year gave up 47 sacks, second worst in the SEC. So the question's going to be this year, can they fix that offensive line? And so far, it looks so good. Well, for this Arkansas football recruiting report, that's going to do it. For Otis Kirk, I'm Evan Gamgo. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you all next week.